Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your whiplash-inducing hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC. When there's just too much cool anime to watch, we've got you covered. Today we will bring the scares, the laughs, and the tears, because in just a moment I will start us off with my review of the eerie village horror show, The Summer That Hikaru Died. After that, John will switch scenery and tell us all about the fun shenanigans going on in City the Animation. Lastly, I will bring us back to the countryside and the cautionary tale of a little happy alien that shows us the true meaning of the phrase, the opposite of well is well meant, in Takopi's original sin. So grab your happy gadgets, don't bring a bunch of severed heads as a tribute to your local deity just to get rid of your debt or pay your rent, and definitely don't pause the pod, we'll be right back. Yoshiki and Hikaru have been friends since they were small, as the only two children around their age in the village. One summer though, Hikaru goes into the forest and comes back different. Looks like Hikaru and has Hikaru's memories, but it's not him. This Hikaru seems almost innocent, full of childlike wonder and eager to experience the summer heat, the countryside, and all kinds of other things like it's for the first time. And for Yoshiki, it matters little if Hikaru is a fake relying on stolen memories, as long as he never leaves again. As Yoshiki desperately clings to Hikaru in his intense grief, it becomes increasingly clear that something dangerous and supernatural may have descended from the mountains into their village. Thanks to ANN and MAL rewrite for that summary. So, this Summer That Hikaru Died is based on a manga by Mokumokuren, which I assume is a pen name.
Yeah, it sure sounds like it.
That started in 2021, counts 7 volumes so far, and is still running. The first season of the anime I'm going to talk about today counts 12 episodes and was produced by Cygames Pictures, which we have talked about before, mostly in our review of Princess Connect.
That I didn't realize that they worked on it.
Yes, I guess. I mean, I'm not sure, but I assume there is probably also going to be a visual novel or something like that. And that
I mean,
work.
That's not necessarily true, but I guess we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Cygames does have their fingers into a lot of different pies.
Yes, absolutely. Both direction and series composition were handled by Ryohei Takeshita, who also directed Jellyfish Can't Swim in the Night and Ero Manga Sensei, and also worked as an episode/unit director, storyboarder, or key animator on a lot of other stuff like Wotakoi, To Love Ru, Flip Flappers, Jujutsu Kaisen, and more. And
at least all the good outbalances
the bad
Ero Manga Sensei.
I mean, Ero Manga Sensei kinda, his expertise with directing that show kinda plays into this one, but I get to that. Not in the bad way, but in terms of that also being somewhat of a romance show, I guess.
Interesting.
In Ero Manga Sensei, it's just more problematic than in this one. Also, it's plenty problematic in this one as well. But yeah, as expected from Cygames, this is a supremely beautiful show. Lush countryside landscapes, almost photorealistic streets and buildings, very detailed and elaborate character and facial animation, great color work. It even mixes live-action footage with animated characters in the ED and later in the story when the ED is played out in the actual events, which was pretty rare and interesting to see. The soundtrack was composed by Taro Umebayashi, who also worked on Space Dandy, Carol and Tuesday, and Yuri on Ice. The music is great, of course, and there's like this. One thing that stood out to me was a nice piece of diegetic music in the very first episode, or the second, I'm not sure, where a part of the school orchestra starts playing a practice song, which becomes then the actual soundtrack as we see a montage of all the things happening at the school and in the town. It's really nice, looks great, and does great work at establishing a deceptively cozy summer vibes atmosphere. And they do stuff like that, like I think 2 or 3 times in this show. So, pretty neat stuff. And yeah, with the small production info out of the way, let's get into the story. So, I mean, this came out before fall, but it was very appropriate that I was able to watch this right before Halloween, because this is a not straightforward, especially not straight, horror show that is all about creepy woods, weird stuff going on in a village, not everyone being who they pretend to be, central mysteries, shady organizations doing stuff in the background, and all that good stuff. So a bit of Stranger Things vibes, maybe, but also, classic folk horror stuff and everything, all thrown into a blender. Very interesting. And mix into that also very personal drama, like a story about loss, a story about friendship, a story about love, very much love. And so that was very interesting from the get-go. So I just read you the summary and what is going on. We have Yoshiki, who's like this kind of solemn, soft-spoken, kind of gloomy guy. Like, he has like black hair, he has long bangs and everything. He has like this looks like he hasn't slept for a while and everything. Doesn't seem to have he has friends, but he is not like this super extroverted, funny guy or anything. That is his best friend, Hikaru, who seems like this ray of sunshine and always goofing off, always doing dumb shit and everything, and always making funny faces. And he's the guy who makes like Yoshiki constantly laugh. And they have been hanging out since earliest childhoods, besties ever since. And it's really funny. Like, you have like really like the light and dark side, both in terms of behavior and look, because Hikaru has white hair. And, Yoshiki has black one, and he's the gloomy one, and Hikaru is the uplift one, the happy-go-lucky one. And all of that kind of gets turned on its head when one fateful day, Hikaru goes to the mountain to do something. We later learned what he was there to do, and then disappears. And comes back after a week, doesn't remember shit what happened to him. And everything seems to be okay. He seems to be the same person to everyone. It's like his parents are like happy he's back and everything. And his friend Yoshiki also seems to be happy, but immediately recognizes something is off here. Something is not right. That is not the Hikaru I knew before. And he's right on the money. And when he confronts Hikaru about it, Hikaru's face changes and this weird black ooze like drips out of his face and forms into like this weird, even kind of like butterfly wing-esque mass like that is just oozing out from his head. And he just lurches over. Yoshiki begs him not to tell anyone because he doesn't want to kill him. So, that would normally change things in a friendship, I would say. But Yoshiki is just so happy to have Hikaru back that he doesn't intend to even do anything about this. Really. Like, he's like, hey, okay, I have this guy, Hikaru, here. He's not Hikaru, so let's just call him Fakeru for now. Just if we want to refer to the original Hikaru in this one, who is obviously some kind of entity. We don't know what at the beginning of the show. We don't even really know it by the end of the first season. You can make a pretty solid guess. The show drops enough info there that you can guess what he is. But in the beginning, it's just like this ominous presence. You don't know its intention. You just know, for now, it's posing as Hikaru. It seems to have fun posing as Hikaru, and it seems to be very much attached to Yoshiki and trying to stay with him and have a fun time with him. And yeah, that is basically the setup for the show. And then the basic mystery of it is, okay, who is this Fakeru? What is he doing here? What are his intentions? Can he be trusted? Is he dangerous? And why is he so attached to Yoshiki? And we have some other people in the town who seem to be kind of involved with the mystery. We have some, older people who seem to know what's going on, or seem to have a pretty good guess. We have to there's a person later that we get acquainted with, who seems to be kind of a medium, because she has made a similar experience that Yoshiki is experiencing right now, where a person from her, a person that was dead came back into her life, and we have Yoshiki's friends from high school. One of them is also very observant and pretty much recognizes immediately that that Hikaru is not the same person. And then we have this guy called Tanaka who comes from out of town and seems to work for a company that is in search of something, apparently whatever Hikaru is, and seems to also be able to handle occult occurrences and whatever. So, pretty interesting, varied cast, but the main attraction, of course, are our two main characters, Yoshiki and Hikaru, or Fakeru. And yeah, I think one thing that is very obvious and cannot be ignored in this show is this is a gay love story. It's heavily implied that Yoshiki is very much gay for Hikaru. It's not clear if Hikaru had the same feelings for him before he probably died and apparently got taken over by this entity. But there are, like, in the beginning, there are kind of subtle hints where Yoshiki gets very mad every time in flashbacks Hikaru talks about Yoshiki getting a girlfriend when he moves away, because he doesn't really want to move away. I mean, he does, but, you know, he doesn't want to leave Hikaru. And also, he doesn't want a girlfriend. He obviously wants a boyfriend. And that is right in front of him, that person. He also, pretty early in the show, at one point, asks Fakeru if he likes him. And when Fakeru replies that he does like Yoshiki a lot, which the real Hikaru apparently never said out loud once, Yoshiki asks him to never leave him again. There's also this very creepy but also very sexually coded scene where Yoshiki wants to know what is actually going on inside this weird Fakeru thing and how it absorbs other spirits and which it can do and everything. And it is invited to stick a hand in an open part of Fakeru's chest, which apparently inside feels like raw marinated chicken. And sticking the hand in deeper and moving it around makes Fakeru feel good. You get the idea. So, and Yoshiki also gets embarrassed when seeing Fakeru's pecs. So yeah, the show doesn't really beat around the bush with that, especially after a couple of episodes. It's all very, very obvious. I also talk about that in regards, and I get to that later. But yeah, that it's very interesting. Yoshiki has a family. Apparently, his parents fight. There's some issues, like, which is also probably also why he was so heavily connected to Hikaru, or still is. Like, his parents fight, and his small sister Karu's maybe depressed. Like, she hasn't visited school in a while. She doesn't seem to want to get really out of the house and everything. It's not made super clear what her problem is, but she doesn't really get out of bed in the morning and every thing. There seems to be some depression thing going on with her. And yeah, like I said, what is also interesting about Fakeru, he has Hikaru's memory stored, but experiences a lot of the same things for the first time for himself. So he reacts differently than Hikaru would. For example, watching a movie in school and Fakeru cries over it, even though the real Hikaru had already seen it before. Or he eats food for the first time that Hikaru had already eaten. But memories are different than experiencing the real thing, of course. So it's all very new to him and very, like, interesting and captivating and everything. And he really is experiencing it like a child, like is experiencing an ice cream for the first time or whatever. So it's really cool. He also claims he didn't kill Hikaru and only took over his body when Hikaru was on death's door. I believe him. The show doesn't really give us much reason to doubt him in that regard. But there's also this lingering underlying threat under everything Fakeru says and does, because it's like, it doesn't really seem to have a full understanding about everything it's doing, especially when it comes to life and death and everything. I'll get to that. So that is what the main, let's say, threat. One of the things that the main threatening atmosphere in the show, the horror atmosphere, is built on. Because, like I said, half of the show is a horror show, is a horror show or a horror story. The other half is a love drama. So this is technically the main threat, because Yoshiki doesn't know if he can really trust Fakaru, and if not, eventually Fakaru will kill him or some other person. There's several scenes where Fakaru doesn't seem to be really able to control himself and tries to consume Yoshiki. Always like pulls back at the right moment and then like apologizes profusely, regrets it, and also seems to be really intent on not hurting Yoshiki. But you as a viewer are always like, okay, can he control himself and everything? You know, deep down, Yoshiki is also understandably really scared of him, at least for a long time. But he also doesn't know what to do and is also not able to let go of the last remnant of his best friend / first love. So immediately you have like this tension in this relationship, of course, that works really well if you add all the horror aspect and everything, but you immediately also understand like how much Hikaru meant to Yoshiki, like how important that person was to him. And you immediately understand what his emotional hang-up is here, and that he's in quite a bind here. And that makes this relationship very interesting and has you on the edge of your seat to like, oh my god, where's this gonna go? Is this like gonna have a super bad ending? Like, is Fakaru gonna go full monster at some point? And for example, in the beginning, there seems to be an old lady that seems to see what he is and recognize him. And I don't know if the show actually outright states it, but I think all but confirms it that he kills that woman just to not be discovered. It's not shown in full detail, but it's like, and they might reveal later on that he is actually not responsible for it. But, you know, it's heavily implied. So the fear that Yoshiki has is not unwarranted. Like, Fakaru might be very dangerous, is probably very dangerous.
Sounds like just the implication alone is more than enough for this story.
Yes, exactly. It definitely holds up, pushes the threatening atmosphere to a max and gives like these really cool horror vibes. Especially since that initial thing happens like at nighttime and everything, and it has really creepy imagery and everything when something stands in front of that woman's door and says, let me in, and then it stops banging on the door, and then she hears from behind her, I'm already inside. It's like, it's really, it's really good. So, yeah, I'd say on the horror aspect, the show really delivers. There's some other stuff, like there are also other spirits in the village, and I get to why that is, and they become more and more prominent. There's also a lot of the village itself also plays a lot into the mystery, and it's a lot about discovering what this village is about, and how the mountain relates to it, and how, you know, whatever Hikaru is relates to it. And we learn that some companies and corporations were involved in this, and there was a bidding war over the land and whatever, I think. And not all of that has been cleared up yet, but a lot of it has, or at least it alludes to certain things in regards to the mystery, what the resolution to that could be. But it's not all been confirmed yet. So that is still being kept kind of vague in certain regards, and that also keeps it interesting, right? You want to see what actually the reason for all this is. Like, again, a lot of things are hinted at pretty clearly, but they could also, you know, throw a curveball at us in the second season, which might be a long time away, considering that the manga apparently doesn't release as quickly. So we'll see. But yeah, there's talks of a failed ritual at some point. There's this deity talked about that is either, depending on who talks about it, Nonuki-sama or Unuki-sama, and that is apparently very important to the mountain. The village itself is weird because it's this made up. It was this one big village before and then was split up. And if you look at it from the top, like on a map, it looks kind of like a person, and it's all very mysterious and creepy. Aside from Yoshiki and Hikaru, we have his classmates, Maki, Yuki, and Asako, and they're hanging out often together. They're not all equally important. Like, aside from, hey, cool summer vibes, and the usual, hey, we're gonna have a fireworks festival, whatever, and hanging out with my friends and stuff, which is in a lot of these shows that are set in late summer. But Asako is very important because she can hear spirits apparently. Her grandma could see them. She can hear them. So she can also partially see them. So she can she quickly recognizes, just like Yoshiki did that, but for other reasons, that Hikaru is not the same. That also, of course, leads to some tension and to a conflict between Yoshiki and Hikaru, because Hikaru does something that he shouldn't do because of that, and it's all very it adds to the drama. But I was surprised at how, let's say, it doesn't get super like dark. Like this doesn't, in the first season at least, this doesn't become a slasher story or anything. Like there's this one big death thing in the beginning with the old woman where we are still not quite sure if Fekaru went just and killed her, or if something else happened, if she was so scared that she killed herself, maybe, right? So that is still to be seen. But outside of that, it's more the lingering threat of Yoshiki being consumed by Hikaru, or, something else happened. The outside force, the guy catching up to them, Tanaka is his name. He's super weird. He always brings his hamster around, like he has a hamster in a box who apparently can also detect spirits. And he uses him basically like as a detector, like as a Geiger counter or something like that. So this is always
whatever works, man.
Yeah, it's this fucking funny scene where he runs into Yoshiki for the first time and they talk to each other, and he says, "Oh, something is up with this kid. I think he's like me. He can see spirits or something." And Yoshiki is kind of standoffish when he talks to him, and then he sees the hamster, and you have like this moment of him just having this stare, and then the next moment is him like being like completely enamored with the hamster, and he has this on his hand, and both of him and Tanaka are like close together, kneeling down and laughing heartily, and Tanaka's like, he's pooping on your hand, and Yoshiki's like, I don't mind, he's so cute. And it's really funny. So the show has a lot of weird humor in it, in parts. That is one of the examples of that. But it's not unwelcome. It's all, when the funny scenes hit, they hit. So it's kind of like absurd comedy in certain parts. But it's not so much that it kind of sabotages the eerie atmosphere. And, the dramatic moments and everything. Those feel always very genuine and build enough tension and everything. So but I appreciate that there was some levity in all this, like, high pressure situations. So, yeah, that also worked really well for me. And we have this other person called Riku Kurebayashi. That is the medium I was talking about before. She seems to be able to sense spirits as well, and has realized whatever dangerous aura was in the mountain until a while ago has now left there and has itself attached to Yoshiki, which of course is Fekaru. And she can do that because apparently her husband came back in the past after he died, and since then or even before that, I'm not sure, but definitely since then she has been able to see spirits and can also exorcise them, apparently. Like, she can slap spirits away and they disappear. That seems to be her power. And she rescues, like, both Asako, I think, at some point, and Yoshiki and Hikaru because of that. Because other spirits start to appear in the village. Because whatever Hikaru was, he was apparently keeping them in, or Fekaru was, he was keeping them in check in the mountain. He's like kind of like the lightning rod for spirits. He attracts them, and when they get close to him, he can absorb them. And now that he has moved down from the mountain to the city, all the spirits that he attracts come with him and start attacking the townfolk. And that's a problem. So our characters don't really know what to do about that at one point, and there's some things that both of them do that complicate things. But that's also lends itself to some eerie imagery, of course, because some people are attacked by creepy spirits. Most of them with severed heads. Interesting. So that is also a big part. Like not the most classic yokai stuff that you can think of, the monsters that you always see in certain shows that are about horror or, fantasy stuff and everything, but very adjacent to that. And some of that stuff really works, like it's really fucking creepy. So the show really does the extra legwork to scare the shit out of you in certain scenes with those spirits that are attracted by Fakeru. So yeah, pretty cool. So yeah, you got enough creepy stuff in here, and that stays pretty much until the end of the show. You got cool character stuff with our two mains, of course. With Asako is probably the character I like the most outside of the main two. Like she's very, like I said, she can also hear / see spirits. She is good at arm wrestling. Apparently, she's a very strong woman. And every time she and Yoshiki and Hikaru and the other two hang out, it's like a cool, cozy atmosphere, and it's nice, but also sometimes threatening, especially when she confronts Fakeru, because she, knows that something is up with him and everything. So that's also an interesting relation that builds here, and yeah. I would still say the main attraction, if you're interested in the show and if you're like, hey, Halloween is over, but I'm still in the mood for a bit more horror, I would still say the most interesting thing about the show, aside from the central mystery, is the relationship between Yoshiki and Hikaru / Fakeru. Both versions of Hikaru, because we see not only how Yoshiki and Fakeru interact in the now time, we also always get a comparison in most episodes with flashbacks to how it was previously with Hikaru, to see like, okay, what is different? Because it's also very much about the differences between Hikaru and Fakeru, if that makes him either less of a person or less of a human being or less of a version of Hikaru just because he experiences things differently. Or if they're just, complete people in their own right. And it's all about Yoshiki accepting that and accepting this version of Hikaru. It's not clear if this story is yet about him letting completely go, about only his past vision of his image of his friend, or letting go of like this version as well, because it's just, a substitute for him. And as long as he doesn't accept that his real quote-unquote friend is already dead, he can't move on. I think it's partially about that. At least the show ponders that a lot. But also the show always goes back to when you think, okay, now he's going to finally get over it and just say goodbye and maybe go Fakeru back to the mountain or whatever. He does a turnaround. It's like, I don't care. I want you to stay here. I want you to stay with me, and I want you to have fun, and I want you to experience life as a human being. And so it's a lot of back and forth there. Yoshiki trusting him, not trusting him when Fakeru does something creepy or stupid, and trying to get out of the situation, then kind of resigning himself to the situation and trying to accept, hey, that's the way it is. I just have to accept it. And so their relationship does not stay on the same level all the time. There's a lot of movement there, a lot of back and forth, and that keeps it lively and the show interesting, because most of the first season is about that. There is the central mystery, but that is also, you get filled in on a lot of the stuff over time, and there's a lot of tension or a lot of world building involved in that, and letting you know about the village and everything. But there's also not that much interesting, like, big reveals that came out of that yet. And the way they are conveyed in the show is also not super interesting. Like, the series can get a bit exposition-y at times, which wouldn't be so bad if it felt a bit more organic. But sometimes people just arrive at the right time to move the story and mystery along with their exposition dumps, which is a bit inelegant. And so, if you just want to go in like, hey, this is a mystery show, I'm in it for the mystery, I'm in it for the spooky mystery stuff, I want to know what is up with this village and everything, there is enough of that in there. But if you're like all about the organic reveal of these things in scary moments and the characters like finding that out in a cool way and investigating mysterious parts of the woods or whatever, they're just small aspects of that. But the big kind of knowledge reveals come by exposition dumps from other people or them reading stuff in a book. And that's not like super engaging, I would say. There might be more interesting stuff coming in the second season in regard to that, because I assume that will focus much more on the central mystery and the revelation in regards to certain plot details. But in this first season, I feel the main draw is definitely the relationship between Yoshiki and Fekaru and how that develops and the back and forth of that. And I like that. Like, that was enough for me. I mean, and I had the mystery on the side. I just felt like, okay, if that was all there was to this show at this point, I would be a bit disappointed. Like, I would also like to have the solid mystery and a cool development there and some cool reveals there and the way it is showing those reveals and, you know, having actually show instead of tell, right? And right now, when it comes to central mystery, it's more tell than show. So I hope they will remedy that a bit in the second season, because everything else in the show works really well. Like, especially, again, the relationship/romance between the central characters. Like, Fekaru tries to not hurt Yoshiki because he genuinely seems to love him too much. There's a moment where they have a conflict and he almost consumes him, but stops himself and says, "No, not you." And he also constantly, when that kind of stuff happens, he begs Yoshiki not to hate him. And into that, of course, plays the topic of homosexuality and how that is used in the show. And like I said, in the beginning, it is kind of subtle, but it becomes very, very, not in your face, but it's very evident over with the more the show progresses. And you know, Yoshiki explicitly mentions that one of the town's youth is homosexual and is ostracized because of it, especially by his family. Yoshiki mentions this in a conversation with, in a flashback with original Hikaru about why he wants to leave the village. He says it's because everyone gets up in everyone's business and he doesn't like that. But it cannot possibly be a coincidence that this topic comes up specifically during that discussion. They, you know, specifically mention like, oh, when he talks about, or that one young guy there talking about his homosexual, like I think this is the first time that I heard in an anime someone say LGBT, because Hikaru says there's an inquisitive nature, like, oh, okay. So that was like, okay, that's the first time I heard that. And, you know, then you have all the visual metaphors, right, with Yoshiki reaching his arm into Hikaru's bodies and everything, and him and him blushing when he sees Hikaru partially naked and everything. And they talk about that. It's not just like this, you know, you see this and make of that what you will. No, Fekaru mentions it later on. It's like, did you love Hikaru? Because you got really flustered when I undressed the other day. So he actually addresses us and talks to him about it. Like, it's not like this unmentioned tension between them. No, he just comes out and says it's like, did you have feelings for Hikaru in that regard? And I won't give away what Yoshiki replies, but it's all very interesting. And it's always interesting when the show actually goes into that. It doesn't outright commit to have Yoshiki say, "I'm gay" or whatever. You know, I don't know if the show or the manga actually will get there, but it's all but outright stated by him, right? So the visual language, the content, the text, the subtext, all hints to that. And I like that the show is kind of blunt about it in certain regards, and it's not like trying to hide itself behind, you know, beating around the bush about that stuff. And that was refreshing. You don't see that in anime that often, at least not in the anime that I consume, which are more, you know, shonen action-ish oriented and everything, of course, with the occasional outlier, of course. But that I would expect that to see in a boys love manga, of course, and the boys love show and whatever. naturally. But in a show that is more maybe geared to general audiences, like this, like a normal like slash horror show, slice of life show, I didn't expect the show to be so forward in that regard. And I appreciated that. And like I said, the love story works. Like the emotional baggage works. It makes it much more understandable why Yoshiki has such a problem of letting his, like the version of Hikaru that he remembers go, and why he is so willing to let this weird, possibly dangerous presence remain in his life, right? And that, like I said, that all works. And yeah, I think it's super cool. I really liked this first season of the show. I liked all the characters. I liked the mystery. Although, like I said, I hope they do a bit more with that in the coming seasons, and especially show it a bit differently instead of just telling us all the important information. Like, make the characters just discover this in a different way, instead of having like a character like Rie or Tanaka come out and tell them about it, or a character we never meet after that again, and or them just reading it randomly in the book and not really heavily reacting to that. So there's got to be a bit better way. So that's probably the only criticism I have of this. Everything else works well. And yeah, if you are interested in that, I would say go and check out the show. Like, again, the most interesting part about this first season was the relationship between the main characters, because that's where the meat of this story is for now. This is where the interesting parts are. This is where the interesting visual stuff is. This is where the interesting story stuff is. This is where the most tension is, the most drama is, the most horror is. It's all there between those two characters. And yeah, I liked it a lot. I thought it was fucking great. Also loved the OP. I thought that it was a fucking banger. I hope the second season won't make me wait too long. Like, it has been confirmed, but no release date yet. So we'll see. I don't know how many volumes the first season covers, but from what I've read online, it might be a while until we see the second season. So, but I'm looking forward to it. I thought this was a neat little horror show. As you know, it's not finished yet. Definitely, the story is still very much open-ended for now, and ends on a big old cliffhanger. So I hope I will get to see the resolution for that, and I hope Netflix doesn't drop it along the way. This is actually, by the way, where you can watch it. But yeah, it's a really good horror show with an interesting hook and captivating relationship between our main duo of characters. The pacing in the first season is a bit uneven because while stuff is happening, a lot of the big plot movements that relate to the central mysteries are revealed to us via exposition dumps. And by the time it wraps up, you still get the feeling that the other shoe hasn't dropped yet, especially when it comes to some of the characters, some of the side characters. But I'm confident that the second season will get us there. So, if you're in the mood for a post-Halloween spooky drama with a great late summer horror vibe and superb production values, please check this out, because it just might give you the dose of goosebumps you are looking for.
All right, well, compared to all of that, it's kind of hard to pin in a precise summary for City the Animation. So I will just read to all of you the summary as provided by MAL Rewrite, and then I'll tack on things as we get deeper in the conversation. Aimless daydreaming in high school is an ordinary part of growing up. But once graduation comes, suddenly there are bills to pay and a higher education to tackle. Even so, Midori Nagumo never quite stopped dreaming, even after entering college, as she still wants to have fun while ignoring her responsibilities. Contrasting Midori's recklessness is her supposed best friend Nikura, who is the complete opposite of Midori and has a goal of becoming a photographer after college. However, Nikura is often pulled into Midori's schemes, which leads them to meet Wako Izumi, a tenacious yet airheaded classmate who is always taking pictures of things she finds fun. The trio ends up living together in the same apartment and attempt to navigate their lives in the city, where unexpected and out of the ordinary things occur daily. So, this was something I was really looking forward to, because this is a story, a show, a series that was penned by Keiichi, I believe the family name is pronounced Arai. It uses like a not commonly used hiragana anymore, so so it's written Arawi, but I believe it's pronounced Arai.
Interesting.
They worked on a little something, maybe you've heard of it, I don't know. It's called Nichijou.
Small
maybe,
show. Never heard of it.
So, little show, no one ever heard of it, produced by, a company you also might not have heard of, Kyoto Animation. And the show definitely has a lot of the same energy, because obviously it's a lot of the same cast and crew working, not just on that, but on pretty much everything KyoAni. Like, it's one of the same, a couple of the same writers and scripters as like Sound Euphonium, Violet Evergarden, Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. The director, Taichi Ishidate, worked on a whole bunch of stuff from like a bunch of Full Metal Panic, Amagi Brilliant Park, Beyond the Boundary. So the pedigree of this show is just, it's just Kyoto Animation is the easiest way to distill it. And as we all know, as we have talked about them several times now, they do a bunch of really great work, and this show is obviously no exception. The music was done by this 4-person troupe called, let's see if I can say this right, Piranhas. Piranhans. I think it's supposed to be written like it's supposed to be a Portuguese word, considering the NH there. It's written Piranhans, but you don't pronounce the H, which leads me to believe they're trying to go for a Portuguese thing, which, if you know anything about Brazil and Japanese culture, I guess outside of Japan, Brazil is the largest population of Japanese people. Yeah. So, but yes, they have done, as this group of 4, Isao Tsukamoto, Manabu Sakata, Piyanika Maeda, which is definitely a stage name, and Yuji Nagayama. They've done, it looks like, some mini albums over the course of the year since like 1994. But this is like the first thing that they have done collectively that was for like anime, where Sakata has done some anime stuff like Darker Than Black, Kids on the Slope, and a few other things as well. And Tsukamoto looks like they've done the One Piece Film Gold soundtrack, or at least some part of it. So yes, there is a lot. There's, again, big, strong pedigree behind this show, as suggested before. And about the plot summary, there's a lot of characters in this show.
Yeah, it's very much sounds like it's like an ensemble show.
It very much is. So in the official marketing, Nagumo, Nikura, and Izumi are referred to as the Mont Blanc Trio, because that's the school they go to. And they are the official quote-unquote protagonists. But then you have such characters like the Makabe family. They run a restaurant, and the father, Tsurubishi, is like this very aloof, easygoing kind of guy. There's Tatewaku, his son, who's like, bless his heart, he's trying to do his best at playing soccer, but he's terrible at it. And then there's Matsuri, who's his like very free-spirited daughter, and who's probably one of the more normal-ish characters on the cast. There's the City Magazine team with the editor-in-chief. There's this depressed manga artist named Kamaboko. There's the Adatara family who runs a liquor store next to the Makabes. There's the oh god, what are they called? The theater troupe Teriadake, headed up by Nobuteru Takari Dake, and he has a troupe of animals in his. Who's helping act stuff out? There's the Fighting Monkey, the Hellbird, Quacksky, Headster, Mr. Squeak, a person who may or may not be an actual person who's wearing a sheet over their head like a ghost named Mr. X.
It's Wiley.
Yes. There's a lot going on. Midori, or Nagumo, kind of touches on several aspects of this because she helps out with the Makabes at their restaurant, making deliveries and whatnot. But she is also like a stagehand for the Takari Dake troupe. Izumi is kind of all over the place. Like I said, she loves taking photos, and she submitted them to this one photo magazine where she's won like a big cash prize, and that puts it in Nagumo's head. Hey, what if I submitted a photo and it got in and I got my big payday?
I'll get photos of Spider-Man.
Yeah. It doesn't quite get to that, but it feels like that a lot. Nikura is like trying to be like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? But then she gets wrapped up in it like, okay, what if we did make that money though? Okay. There's a lot of moving parts to this. Like, Tatewaku, the son, is trying his best at soccer, but he's awful at it. So he and his team are trying their best to keep their number one star player from getting hurt and getting injured, but the dude is very frail and he gets injured a lot. I believe his name is Sasago, and they end up having to rely on him even though he's like constantly out of the game. There's one time where I think is it Nagumo or Nikura is sitting on like the riverbank just watching them practice. It gets beamed in the face with their soccer ball, and it's like, you know what, that's fine, just be careful with it. And then she gets beamed in the face again, and she's like, oh well, you know, that's fine, you guys just got to be more careful. And then it happens again and again and again, and it keeps happening, and it's like, I don't think this is an accident.
Probably not.
Kamaboko has his manga series running in the city magazine called Mr. Bummer, and he's like running out of inspiration when Izumi submits a comic for the magazine under a pen name, and she's discovered by one of the editors, and it's like, we need your help on this. And she's like very reluctant to be like, I don't know if I want to do this. I just want to take photos and and just keep doing my thing. There's this rich girl in town who, whenever she sees someone doing a good deed, like be it for her, for someone else, she goes to her butler and says, that person deserves a reward. And they basically get kidnapped and taken to this tower in her backyard where people are just like treated like kings, but you know, they can just leave if they can solve the riddles and mysteries of the tower, which this happens to Nagumo, and the answers to all the riddles just sort of are self-evident, and she's like, what is this? What are we doing here? What's going on? There's a lot to this show, and it's hard to concretely describe it all as one cohesive plot because, like, you said it best. It's an ensemble. There's a lot of just different subplots. There are some things that kind of tie into each other as the story goes along. So, you know, there are connecting threads between parts of these stories. Like, there's one where Matsuri is friends with this girl, Eerie, and there's this sort of underlying story that Eerie is eventually going to move away, and they're trying to enjoy their days in what they call this going home club, and they are so just like birds of a feather that they're basically reading each other's minds and what's going on. But Eerie has such a hard time telling her, yeah, well, I'm going to be moving away and all of this. And she tries to play it off as like, it's not a big deal when, it kind of is. There's this big race that pretty much everyone takes part in for the big cash prize. And it turns into like this big goofball obstacle course weirdo thing. And it's just like, okay, so this just turned into like a foot race, but it's also Takeshi's Castle.
Sounds great.
So there's a lot of that. There's this scene where Nikura has this locket that she really treasures. And Nagamo's like, Nikura, you're always looking at that thing. What's inside it? And Nikura's like, nothing. There's nothing in it. Don't you worry. And Nagamo tries to snatch it, and then it gets stolen by like this rabbit cat thing. It's hard to describe it. It's like a cat with ears of a rabbit. And she's trying to chase it down and get it back. And she doesn't want to reveal to Nagumo that inside the locket is a picture of Nagumo, because she kind of looks up to, how hardworking and aspirational Nagumo was in high school. So it's, just kind of sweet thing, but she's also like, I can't let her know this because, what would she think about that? Until she finds that it was dropped in like this like 100 yen trinkets basket in front of this shop. And she's like, I can get it back now. There's so much. There's so much. And I feel like I'm doing a disservice in the way I'm describing these things, because it's like 80 different little story segments spread across 13 episodes. But also there was more to the story than that. I was doing some reading earlier that they cut a lot to fit this into 13 episodes, apparently. Because there were some people who were super convinced, this is going to be 26 episodes. Like, it's going to be like a 2-core show. And it sounds like that was not part of KyoAni's plan. So we kind of got like, I'm not sure. I guess they just wanted to maybe get this out there and get it done. But I guess Arai was also there working with them and be like, okay, we can cut this, we can cut that, we can cut this. So he was there to be, or they were there to be like, yeah, I think we can suffice with these parts of the story and still get across everything that I want to. So, so there was that much at least. This was another show that I kind of went back and forth watching episodes subbed and dubbed. And the dub was every bit as crazy and bombastic as the original Japanese voice cast, which was really cool. I just have one criticism, and that's like the back half of the final episode, like it's like 8 to 10 minutes long of just, it's just this one big musical number, and it's great, but they didn't dub it.
Okay. I mean,
like, even
they didn't have people on in the cast that could sing.
I mean, I guess, but even the parts that were like, like, I'm sure you've seen plays and musicals where there's like talky parts in between different songs. Yeah. They didn't even dub those. So it was like kind of a choice on their part. And I don't quite get that. Like, I get, maybe on the whole singing part, because, this was a simul dub and they're trying to get it out there at the same time. But even so, it was still kind of like,
interesting.
It still struck me as a weird decision. And I don't think it takes away from the rest of the show or the rest of the dub, because everyone was still giving their all. And it's like the big yelly hyper energy that Nichijou had as well. So,
did it end on a satisfying note where you're like, okay, I'm glad that this is what I got out of it. I would have liked to see more like they maybe initially planned or what people suspected? Or were you like, this is the right amount of nonsense in the right amount of episodes?
I think it was pretty good for what it was, because the big musical number at the end, it deals with Tsurubishi being like, our restaurant got awarded a Michelin star.
Whoa.
Wow. But then it turns out it was just like this star that was given to them by the local police officer. He's like,
Oh, no.
I hand out these stars to people whose work I think is really good. And they're like,
I mean, that's still nice.
they're like, after they have this big musical number celebrating everything.
Whoops.
So it's goofy, it's dumb. And I mean, this was at least in service of, a quote unquote complete adaptation of the manga. Asterisk. I say asterisk because the manga had its run from March 2017 to April 2021. And then it came back this year.
Oh, interesting.
So the manga started running again this July, and I guess there's another chapter releasing next month in December. So I guess this must have done well enough to garner more interest for Arai to be like, you know what? I'm gonna bring it back.
Yeah, maybe this will also herald another season at some point.
That'd be nice, yeah. I mean,
or an OVA or a movie or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I just was, like I said, I was super excited for this show because Nichijou is so big and goofy and fun and silly. So to see something that, to see this sort of thing come back was really nice. And it was just a nice, super silly thing to have to watch each week, as opposed to, well, I'm going to talk about it next time. But, it was cool to have something a little lighthearted. And it knew what it was trying to be as it was going along. Like, I mean, obviously, I don't think Sakamoto Days ever takes itself super seriously at any point either, but this is a different kind of goofy. So
yeah, sure.
Just because it's much more slice of life.
Exactly, it's slice of life. At least, I mean, I haven't seen it, but from what you're telling, it's also probably a lot more non sequitur humor in there, and it's not as plot focused as Sakamoto Days is, because despite all the shenanigans that are happening in that show, that is surprisingly focused on its main plot, which I did not expect from that show. But this seems to be, like you said, a slice of lifey. Hey, here are all these people. They're living in this weird city, and they're all having their little adventures, and you get to partake in them.
They even have one episode up front where they're like, hey, so this was just going to be like 12 or 13 little rapid fire sketches. Enjoy. And they just went for it, just like bam, bam, bam. And each one had its own goofy punchline as it went along. So it's like, okay, they just went for it with this one.
But was the city, considering that's the name of the show, do you feel like that is also like a part of the cast? Like,
yes, because
sitting as a setting is very important to the vibe of the show.
Yeah, because I mean, it's very much built out because you have the Makabe restaurant, you have the liquor store, you have the magazine publishing place, you have the university, you have the high school, you have the mansion of the girl with the towers, you have the airport, there's a bookstore, there's a lot. They cover like so many bases, and I guess there's like even like there's some like official materials out there outlining, like there is a map outlining this is how the city is laid out, this is where everything is. The city is, as cliche as this is to say, as much of a character as the rest of the cast, because it's so filled out and there's so many things going on, and there's so many places that the characters go to and see and do. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned Sakamoto Days, because that's actually an aspect that I expected from that show to have in regards to how its first episode is set up, where it's like, hey, you have all these weird side characters that interact with Sakamoto when he isn't in his store and helps out in the city. And I expected to have that show more of that, where it's like, hey, now the assassin, in the first couple of episodes, they are attacked in an amusement park in the city. And, maybe then they're attacked at the store of someone else Sakamoto knows or recently helps out. But they have to hide the fact that he is attacked by assassins or whatever, right? So that the city itself and, the places that he, as, a store owner and whatever, regularly has to interact with, become part of the plot and, of the character interaction pieces and everything. And there are parts of that, sure, but it's not as prominent as I expected it to be. It's not as slice of lifey as I expected it to be, because it's, like I said, a lot more plot driven. But it sounds like City is exactly what the name suggests. That's all about the characters that populate the city and all, the bullshit that happens around that, and you get to know more and more of them because all of them are kind of set in the same scenario, just with different interactions between these different characters in the different places. But sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it's a show that is very all over the place, and yet you have this one binding element of the city itself, and you get to see everyone doing their thing over the course of all these chapters and episodes. So it's cool to see it. The manga is coming back. Again, fingers crossed that maybe the show will come back at a future point. But we know KyoAni's production pipeline is when it's done.
Yeah. And
Which,
that is the right approach, right?
Yeah, that's fine. There's no problem with that.
And it's glad that they have, let's quote unquote, the luxury to do it that way, because that is always better for the show. Like if the production is not rushed, like if there's no fucking crunch or whatever, that eventually that benefits the product, quote unquote, like the end result. So
right.
I'm glad they can do it that way. Did you have a favorite character in the show? Or are there just too many?
Oh, many. There's so many. Like, I like Nagumo because she's a goofy schemer who gets her comeuppance several times. I feel bad for Tatewaku because he's just trying his best, but his dad is always trying to get the better of him, and it's just... Wako is silly because she's a free spirit, and I like her a lot. But there's a lot of characters to like, and I think it's very easy to find 1, 2, or 10 characters that you really like out of this cast. But yeah, it's hard to go into much more detail than that because of how much goes on, but. If you're interested, the show is on Prime Video. Looks like it's pretty much there worldwide. So that is the one global source to watch it, and it's definitely worth checking out because it's a nice, quick, breezy watch.
A squid-like creature known as a Happian leaves his home planet with the desire to spread happiness across the universe. He lands on Earth, but quickly finds himself in danger of captivity by its inhabitants. Fortunately, he is found by an unsmiling little girl named Shizuka Kuze, who feeds him and names him Takopi. Feeling indebted to her, Takopi decides to do everything in his power to bring a smile to her face. The task is easier said than done, however. Shizuka is bullied by her classmates. She does not have a father, and her mother is never home, though the gravity of these issues flies over the naive Takopi's head. Even so, Shizuka does have one source of happiness, her dog Chappie. The connection Shizuka and Chappie share only increases Takopi's desire to make the girl smile. While Takopi's attempts to lift Shizuka's spirits lead to unintended consequences, he is determined to take things into his own tentacles, test his understanding of human beings, and achieve his goal of spreading happiness. Thanks again, MAL rewrite for the summary, misleading as it might be. This story, Takopi's Original Sin, is based on a manga by Taizan 5, another pen name, or Taizan Go, I don't know. Another pen name, I assume, which ran for 2 volumes from 2021 to 2022. That's a low number. And Taizan 5 also wrote the manga, the Ichinose family's Deadly Sins. So sins seem to be that person's theme of choice. The Takopi Original Sin anime adaptation has 6 episodes, which makes sense since the manga is so short. First episode is double length. And is produced by the studio Initiya, who also did the animation production for Masara and worked on other stuff like the Princess Principal movie, Spicy Wolf, Trigun Stampede, and Frieren. Direction and series composition were handled by Shinya Ino, who also directed the first 2 seasons of Dr. Stone and was the storyboarder and episode director on other projects like Hanabad, Review Starlight, Made in Abyss, and Frieren again. Just like the summer that Hikaru died, this is an incredibly pretty show, albeit with a very different look at animation style. It is much more rough and loose, both in terms of character designs and animation. The characters and backgrounds have thick lines and often a sketchbook look to them. I don't want to call it cartoony, because that's not the first thing that comes to mind for me. It's really like rough drafts in a sketchbook. But yeah, compared to the more realistic or naturalistic look of the first show I reviewed today, this was a very different experience visual-wise. Regardless, the animation is super expressive and fluid, and when paired with the incredible music, really drives home the many emotional moments this show has to offer. Speaking of the music, that was composed by Yoshiaki Fujisawa, who should be very familiar to you, John, because he worked on a lot of Love Live stuff and A Place Further Than the Universe. But also on a lot of other things like Mushoku Tensei, Review Starlight, Land of the Lustrous, and Apocalypse Hotel. And like I said, the music is great. A lot of eerie, somber tracks used in the dark or melancholic moments in the show, of which there are plenty, but also often intentionally happy and uplifting songs to serve as a dissonant contrast to the absurdly and sometimes darkly funny, fucked up stuff that is on display in certain situations. In short, it all works very well to evoke exactly the emotion the show is trying to evoke in its audience at any given time without feeling really out of place, even though, like I said, it sometimes absolutely does not match at all what is happening in the story. So, before I go into the characters and plot, let me say that this is a story with a lot of twists and turns and is subverting expectations several times during its very short runtime of 6 episodes. So before I give anything away, which I've already done for its first episode in the sneak peek where I talked about it, consider checking out the first episode for yourself. The twists will just hit harder if you don't know anything about the show to begin with. Let me just say, don't believe the nice story summary and the show's cute OP when it comes to what the show actually is and what its tone for most of its runtime is. With that being said, the show starts out pretty innocently. We have this weird octopus-looking alien from the planet Happy, so a Happian, Happy Seijin or whatever. And crash lands on Earth, apparently, or is shot down, not too clear. Tries to escape the alien hunter, FBI guys, I don't know, whatever. We only see that in a cute like crayon sketchbook flashback thing. And then runs into this girl called Shizuka. And wants to immediately bring a smile to that girl's face because she's not smiling when she meets him, and is intend to do that with its many different gadgets that it has, called happy gadgets that can all do various different magical things. And judging from the OP, that is the entire story, where it's like, hey, here's the sad girl who's being bullied at school. And this alien will help her making connections with the main problem girl in the class that is bullying her. They will form this connection, and everyone is gonna be happy, and it's gonna be a lot of shenanigans until they get there. But the Takopi will make that happen.
Surely nothing will go wrong.
Nothing can go wrong in this story, possibly. So, to be fair, I did not buy that when I saw the first trailer. I immediately was like, I do not believe the book you're selling me here, the tale you're selling me here show. Like, I get that this is a red herring, like the OP is not, and funny thing is, it not entirely is. There is some truth to what is happening in the OP, but there's also a lot more lingering below the surface, and that is immediately evident when you watch the first episode, which, to be fair, is double length, like I said. But at the halfway point of this, you already have understood that the tone of this show is very different. And that gets only emphasized the more this show progresses. Trust me when I say this. So, the first episode, like I said, is mostly about Takopi trying to a bunch of different gadgets to impress Shizuka and trying to get her to smile and everything. There's like these wings that can make you fly. And Shizuka doesn't seem to be interested, and because, you know, she sees that and she's like, hey, even if I fly, nothing will change. I can't get away from the situation I'm in, basically. And we slowly learn what her situation is. She is living mostly alone in a home raised by a single mom who's an escort, who's never home. And at school, she has no friends. She is bullied all the time, especially by this mean girl called Marina. And not only verbal abuse, but also physical. And the only point of happiness, like the summary correctly states, is her dog Chappie. That was her dad's dog, apparently, or at least bought when her dad was still around. He left the family a while ago. He's not dead. He just, you know, left and got divorced from Shizuka's mom. Now she lives with her mom and everything. And yeah, but Chappie is like the last remnant of, or memory of, a happier time when her parents were still together, and the only memory she has of her dad, basically. So she clings to that. And, you know, Takopi, he doesn't understand any of this. Like, for an alien that comes to a planet and just tries to, like, know and should know stuff about bringing happiness to the people that inhabit this planet, he knows shockingly little about the people of this planet. It's half funny, half infuriating, and I said that in the sneak peek, how naive Takopi is and misunderstands pretty every depressing detail she has about her life. It thinks she doesn't want to fly because some humans might already be able to fly, and she probably has already done this. It thinks she doesn't have a dad because children only have mothers on this planet. It thinks the injuries on her face are decorations she put there herself. It's like, Jesus Christ, you are so oblivious. And partially that goes away during the further the show progresses, but in certain cases, it always falls back onto this. Like, Takopi is kind of an idiot. The show kind of explains this by it being kind of a newborn in a way, and there are some other reasons to that I probably won't go into because I don't want to give everything away. I will give some stuff away, at least to the halfway point of the show, so be aware of that. But, you know, there are some reasons why Takopi is the way he is. And, you know, some of that is understandable, but some of that is also just, it feels like stemming from a very simple worldview, like on his planet. And every time he has a big revelation and understands, oh, okay, that's how it actually was, he's very flustered. And there are different degrees to that. But yeah, in the beginning, it's like, hey, I want to make this girl smile. And the easiest way is I'm going to show her fun little stuff. Like, the wing stuff doesn't work. I don't know what else. He shows her the happy camera where he can take pictures, you know, and says, hey, here, immediately the picture is printed out. Look at that, the two of us, Shizuka and I. Isn't that nice? And Shizuka is like, why not just use a smartphone? This camera is much heavier than that. So, also not impressed. And then one day, when Shizuka is appearing before Takopi, she apparently has been severely beat up and holds the empty collar of Chappie in her hand. And Takopi, in his usual oblivious self, can't interpret any of that, doesn't understand any of that, that things are really dire, and just shows her a new gadget to make her happy. And that is a ribbon that can be made as long as possible because it's supposed to be connected to the finger of one friend and then the other side to the finger of another, so they are always connected no matter how far they are apart. And he shows that, and that's the first time that Shizuka is really showing interest in the gadget. It's like, please give that to me. I want to try that out myself. And that is a problem because there are not many routes to the on the planet Happy, but the most integral one is that you are not supposed to let the person you want to make happy use a happy gadget without supervision. But Takopi is very inexperienced, and he thinks, what can go wrong? And he just gives the reconciliation ribbon to Shizuka so she can make up with her friend, because he thinks that Marina and her are friends and just needs some help to stop fighting, and gives it so she can use it herself. And like I already gave away in the sneak peek, which I kind of regret, I should have kept it more vague in the sneak peek, because, like I said, it's still the first half of the first episode where this happens, but still, it's a spoiler. So if you don't want to know anything, turn off now. But yes, he gives that to her, gets worried after a while. And it's like, shit, I shouldn't have done that. I don't know. I should go and check on her. And he does. He goes to her house, calls out her name. We hear a creaky noise and then see that Shizuka has hanged herself under the roof of the house. Because she couldn't tolerate the bullying anymore and her situation and everything. We don't know exactly what happened before this, what happened to Chappie and everything, but we understand that it must have been dire enough that she decided to end her life. And this is the first time that Takopi encounters that, and it's apparently like it naturally makes him really distraught. It's the first time he apparently has encountered death, and in that way, and he then tells basically to the audience, this apparently is what suicide is. This exists on this planet. I don't know why. I don't understand it. I don't know why Shizuka decided to do this. But I want to change that. And luckily, the camera I talked about earlier has a special function that was hinted at, but he didn't get to tell Shizuka what that function is. And the function is, if you made a picture, you can feed that picture back into the camera and return to the time that a picture was made. So, luckily, he took that picture a couple of days ago. So, he returns to that time the picture was taken and is hell-bent on trying to change history, basically, change the trajectory of Shizuka's story, so to make her smile eventually and stop all the bad things from happen, especially the bad thing of her killing herself. So, yeah, naturally, this was, even though it happened so early, is a gut punch, and I expected something like that would happen in this show, even if the show didn't have goddamn suicide depiction warnings before the first episode, which it does, and I can understand why, because it's a very harrowing scene. It's very dark. It's very disturbing just to see Shizuka dangling there under the roof and hearing the sounds and everything and seeing Takopi's reaction. It sounds like it would be silly because, he's a small pink alien that looks like a fucking octopus. So him discovering a body, you would maybe laugh. You would think that could be funny in a way, but trust me, it's not. It's very disturbing. It's a horrifying scene. And the show does a really good job of portraying it and giving it the gravitas it deserves through the visuals, through the music especially. And it's really good. But yeah, speaking of the suicide, the warnings, the content warnings, this work contains sensitive depictions involving life and death. These scenes have been visually portrayed with respect for the original story's intent and are by no means intended to encourage or promote such actions. We hope you enjoy the bittersweet yet happy story of Takopi and the children as they face their extraordinary fate and accompany them throughout their journey. Takopi's original Sin Production Committee. And later to that is added, if you or someone you know needs help, visit crisishelpresources.com. It's a good recommendation, so I want to mention it here as well. And yeah, from that point on, the mission statement of the show seems to be pretty damn clear. We have Takopi, who can always rewind time, And every time he hasn't quite figured out how to save Shizuka yet, he's just doing that and changing bits about Shizuka's daily life. And that sounds pretty simple, right? Like, it's easy. Like, I change the bullying, whatever. I find the thing that currently causes Shizuka the most problems. So I'm trying to change that and everything. So that will be simple, right? Well, it would be if Takopi wasn't an oblivious, naive idiot who is operating very much on a surface level when it comes to problem solving. And
that's kind of a sticking point, huh?
Yes, very much so, especially on heavy problematic personal topic like depression, bullying, suicide, and stuff like that. And you constantly see that he has no understanding of what the underlying root cause of this is. The most obvious, prominent thing is the bullying. And we see that he's starting to accompany Shizuka to school, wearing camouflage. Like, he can wear this flower gadget that makes him invisible, and he just looks like Shizuka has put a flower in her hair. But even that already causes another problem, because now Marina finds another thing she can make fun of, right? Because, like, why are you putting this flower in your hair? You look stupid, right? So immediately he is causing more problems for Shizuka by doing this. And
like, he could have, at least with that one, like, he could have realized that.
Yeah, again, he is too oblivious for that. And that can get frustrating. Like, you can, at some points, you can get, like, you need a strong stomach for this show when it comes to tolerating his obliviousness, although it's understandable, but also how hateable certain characters become. And I mean, the show is intentionally doing that to you. It wants you to feel a certain way towards certain characters. It drives that home, and I will talk about that. But if you can't tolerate, like, some really uncomfortable scenes when it comes to personal interaction, especially between kids and bullying and that regard, this show will be very hard to stomach for you. Just warning you out there. I feel it's worth it, especially by the end. But there's some scenes in this show that are just so goddamn brutal to watch, and just are gut punches over and over. So just be aware of that. But yeah, so we have the daily life of Shizuka in the school, which is horrifying. Like, Marina apparently wrote "die" on her backpack, on her table. The teacher does not notice that, or is not interested in that, apparently. Like, please change your job, you incompetent hack.
What do you mean? How do you not know? Oh.
I mean, or she doesn't. The teacher generally seems like she's either overworked or doesn't care, or both. And like, the table is almost in front of her desk. Like, she cannot have seen this. So it's crazy. And Marina, ironically wears a shirt that says love on it, has that printed on it, which is like, immediately the show is very intent on making you hate that girl, and very good at it. Takopi is definitely helping in a way. For example, by telling Shizuka the solution to a homework problem in advance because the bullies stole her notebook. But it still doesn't understand the underlying problem of why exactly Shizuka is sad, why she gets bullied, what bullying even is. It has a lot to learn. So his very superficial approach to helping ends up causing, like I said, more damage than good. The stuff with the flowers, flower, for example, but also some other stuff. It just further agitates Marina. He's trying to treat the symptoms, not the root cause. And don't get me wrong, it's very fun to see Marina become increasingly agitated by her, usual bullshit not working out. But that also causes an escalation, which Takopi gets to experience on a very personal level all too soon. And the show makes the very wise decision to put Takopi in Shizuka's shoes, and thus us in her shoes, because, Takopi is the point of view character for us, by Takopi copying her body with one of his gadgets and talking to Marina, thus experiencing violent bullying firsthand for the first time. It's a brutal and disturbing scene. Like, Marina slaps and kicks the shit out of Shizuka's body, and obviously that scares the shit out of Takopi. So after rewinding time, he is too afraid to pose as Shizuka again to take the beating that he is somewhat responsible for. But thanks to his otherwise headstrong nature, he is not giving up and is able to at least get help for Shizuka regardless. And Shizuka says that considering her life has been like this for a long while, it has been not as bad since Takopi started to help her out. And that additionally fires up him to find a way to make her really happy. But anyway, the help that Takopi gets comes in the form of our third important character, Azuma, who's like this young boy. By the way, this is all set in elementary school. Just to let you know that this is not a high school thing. So with advanced this is between elementary school kids. I forgot to mention this.
Yeah, you kind of buried the lead on that one. What?
This is definitely all between elementary school kids going on, which makes it, of course, even more hard to watch.
Like, when you were starting to describe it, I was like, well, this has got to be, like, at least middle school. Elementary!
Pretty sure it's elementary school. Judging, from how old the characters look and what actually they do in school and everything. I don't think they're middle school age yet. But yeah, definitely not high school. But yeah, so Azuma is a member of the student council and seems to be a good guy that is willing to help, but Shizuka is not ready to accept his help yet. We learn that the main instigator of the problem that Marina has with Shizuka is that Marina's dad and Shizuka's mom got close because she's an escort. Apparently she took him out and whatever. And now, he's regularly paying her, hanging out with her, dating her, whatever. And that causes, of course, problem with Marina's mom, and Marina is taking all those negative feelings out on Shizuka because Shizuka is in her immediate vicinity. She can't really do anything about Shizuka's mom, but she can let her anger out at Shizuka. And of course, fixing that is a tough nut to crack for Takopi. It means he also doesn't have to only learn about Shizuka, but also about Marina to solve this issue, which he does kind of way too late. Because, just to go into that first, why Marina is so focused on Shizuka. Marina's mom is depressed, maybe drunk, because her husband is having an affair, of course, with Shizuka's mom. And she is forcing that conflict on Marina by having her take her side and using her as a constant pillow to cry in. Like a living comment box or advice column to complain to. I believe the technical term for that is parentification. Like, instead of shielding your kids from your issues, you are forcing your own problems and responsibilities on them and are forcing them to take a position on a matter they are not equipped to handle or even supposed to be involved in. Which she is doing by, like, hey, you're on my side, right? You're on my side, right? You're all I have, right? And complains about her dad constantly. Or her husband. That is a problem, which is not to excuse her dad's behavior or anything. He's an unfaithful piece of shit, justifying everything with him being the single earner of the family, and he doesn't seem to give a damn about his daughter either, so he can also go. So, as with a lot of anime, the kid protagonist issues are coming down to adults being shitty and selfish. That is kind of one of the core statements of the show, if not the core statement. Like, fuck parents. Kids would be better off without parents. But, therein lies the issue that kids wouldn't exist without parents. So that, again, also hard not to crack in general. And like I said, Shizuka's parents are divorced. And we know about Shizuka's mom. We'll get to Shizuka's dad. But yeah, we learn what actually happened on the day Shizuka hanged herself before Takopi rewound time. Because Marina does it again. She beats up Shizuka while she's walking Chappie. And because Chappie is a good dog, he of course lashes out at her and bites her, which Marina planned. So he gets taken away by animal control. She's a smart little bitch, I give her that. And Shizuka's mom also sucks because she only cares about how this incident with Chappie inconveniences her. She also does not pay attention to the needs or psychological status of her daughter whatsoever. So, like I said, you need a strong stomach to watch this show without getting increasingly angry at almost everyone except Shizuka and Azuma at this point. So, with all this out of the way, and if this sounds interesting enough to you, please check out this show. Again, it sounds harrowing and it sounds uncomfortable to watch, and it is, but it's worth it by the end. But what comes next is an even bigger spoiler than what happens in the first episode. I will still give it away because there's some very interesting stuff that results from that I don't want to talk about, so I can't not talk about it. But just as a warning, this is probably like the showstopper of this fucking show and where the real story begins. So you have been warned. Please, if you still want to experience this, most of what the show has to offer for yourself, because this happens at the end of the second episode. So it's still pretty early on in the show. But it's, very important and a big twist. So please keep that in mind. So, John, if you remember, when I talked about it in the sneak peek, I thought about, hey, after the big twist that Takopi can rewind time, that is going to be the rest of the show, right? He's going to have to learn about, hey, Shizuka, about Marina, and then he has to bring the two together. And that's going to be,
sense.
Right? That's going to be the main draw of the story. And it's going to be a long road, but eventually he'll be successful. And it's going to be a pretty straightforward path from there with, some, hurdles on the way, of course, because people are people, but eventually it's going to get there. I was so wrong about where that story would go and what the original sin part relates to.
Oh, no.
There's another fucked up wrinkle to this story, let me tell you. So, up to this point, the show did a lot of legwork to make Marina as hateable as possible, which worked really well for me. I knew there was a reason for why she behaves like she did, but I still was thinking, Marina is really lucky that Takopi is very naive and not ruthlessly solution-oriented. Takopi could have just transformed into a truck driver and isekai'd the shit out of her. That would have solved at least Shizuka's biggest current issue. And the writer of the manga had me packed, so the show is like, oh, you want this, CC, you sick fuck? Well, one curled monkey's paw coming up then. And when Marina inflicts another of her beatdowns on Shizuka, Takopi becomes so confused and scared that he smacks Marina in the head with his camera and kills her. And yes, I cheered, sorry, not sorry. But this is where the real story starts, because then the camera stops working and he can't rewind time anymore.
No.
And this also becomes where some of the characters get turned around. Like, because Shizuka's reaction to this happening is overly happy and kind of fucked up. Because...
I mean, if that's constantly happening to you every day, yes. I could see that,
it's very understandable, but it's like really... There is like... it's really funny. There's like this... this famous track from Vivaldi, like Summer in E major or whatever, is played when when she realizes that Marina is dead, and she is like, "Oh my god, I was saved by magic! Thank you, Takopi. I didn't want to believe that magic is real because I wished upon a star that my dad would come back, and he didn't. But now you said you could solve my problems with magic, and you did. Marina is dead. The witch is dead. Hooray!" It's so fucked up. It's so fucked up, but I also kind of laughed because it was so absurd. And, like I said, this stops the camera from working, so there are no do-overs anymore. And this is also what I thought is what the original sin part of the title refers to. And at least that's what the show states at this point. And Takopi is kind of happy because he made Shizuka smile, but obviously this is only gonna get worse. And it immediately does. This is the trajectory this story now takes. This is an enormous rug pull because it turns this from a story of mending differences, at least for now, into a cautionary tale. And, at that point I was like, oh man, the OP is just this giant red herring then. It was just lying to me. And, of course, it's not enough that those two now have to deal with the fucking corpse. No, they're discovered by Azuma. And he discovers what Takopi has done and recommends Shizuka to turn herself in because nobody will believe an alien did it. Even though I think everyone could see him if he doesn't hide himself. But okay.
Yeah, what?
Yeah, but he says please turn yourself in. There's no way around that. But since she doesn't want to go to juvie, she opts for covering up the crime as an option and drops Azuma into it. Which Azuma agrees to, because he has his own baggage of not being able to fulfill his parents' expectations like his big brother can, and he thinks this is something where he can prove his own worth to Shizuka, who he seems to have a crush on. So you see the complicated relationships happening here, and all the deeply fucked up shit that is gonna evolve from that. So they bury Marina's body in one of Takopi's gadgets, and Takopi transformed into her so they can pretend she is still alive. So from this moment on, and I really, I should have seen this coming in a way, but I did not. The show does a similar thing like Last of Us 2, where it uses its second half to make you empathize more with the villain of the quote-unquote of the first half, and makes you get angry/frustrated with the first half's protagonist. Because once Shizuka is relieved from her shackles by Marina biting the bullet, or rather the magic camera, she is showing some not very pretty sides of her. First, she is just overjoyed that a person died, which is understandable because it was her tormentor, but she also starts manipulating people around her. She ropes Azuma into helping her cover up the crime. She has Takopi already wrapped around her finger anyway because it just wants her to smile. She suggests Azuma steal something his brother bought with his part-time job, so his brother focuses on studying instead and takes some of the parents' pressure off Azuma. Like, she's a little schemer, and that was not evident before. Takopi and Azuma want to come clean after Marina's body has been discovered, but Shizuka is not interested. She just wants to go to Tokyo to see Chappie at her dad's place, where, according to her mom, Chappie was moved to. None of this concerns her. She's obviously in denial, but she has been living in an alternative reality created by the relief she felt when the source of her constant pain was taken from her life by literal magic. She also tries to convince Azuma to turn himself in for killing Marina in place of her. So, while the first half of the show makes her look much more like a completely helpless victim, in the second half, she often comes across like a sociopath. Again, this of course can all be traced back to her constant torment and living circumstances, which have worn on her and her psyche over the years. In general, she had to endure a lot until now, but that applies to Marina as well, because she also comes out of a shitty broken home. So just like with Ellie and Abby in The Last of Us 2, there is no black and white here, which I appreciated. Well, except for the parents, they're all assholes, but at least for the kids, it's like, all have their baggage, all have their problematic upbringing. You understand why they are the way they are, and you're desperately, just like Takopi, trying to find a way out of here for these kids. It's just told in a very interesting, absurd, and fucked up way to an extent, especially after the end of episode 2. But yeah, this all leads to an incredibly harrowing scene where Takopi, who poses as Marina at this point, finally understands what he has done to Marina and her family by killing her. But when he hears her parents talk about her and or her mother at least, I think, and when he sees pictures of them from happier times, that is a really effective scene, and I had tears in my eyes and everything. And you know, it shows us a different side of Marina and makes us empathize with her more. And you don't know what to think anymore, and it's really good, but also really uncomfortable to watch. And yeah, then of course things get worse and worse. Marina's body is discovered. All the pressure wears on Azuma, and he becomes worse at school, which of course increases the pressure from his shitty mom. And yeah, he's kind of the only person you feel really sorry for at this point. Though he's also not without flaws. He of course helps cover up the crime, and the more we look into his background, we see that he wasn't helping Shizuka because it was the right thing to do, but because he wanted to make her his project to show his mom that he can be a good boy and an overachiever just like his brother. So his reason is also selfish, just to a different degree, because he was still doing a good thing, but it was kind of like the thing Takopi was doing, not only as oblivious and more self-centered. Of course, like I said, he also has a crush on Shizuka, which makes him an easy target for her manipulations, but he is not a completely helpless victim here either. Regardless, he completely falls for Shizuka, saying she will wait for him, even if he has to go to juvie, and she won't give up on him, and everything will be okay, and she gives him a kiss on the cheek and a hug, so all the verbal and physical affection he has wanted from his mom for such a very long time, which makes him decide to turn himself in. He is ultimately saved by genuine affection shown towards him by his big brother, who seems to be the only really good person in the story. At least what we see from him. But yeah, Shizuka, I mean, not saved. He still has to turns himself in, apparently, for Shizuka's crime. It's not made super clear, but apparently, because it seems like the police also believes that she made him do it. Shizuka, meanwhile, flees to Tokyo during the summer break, which was this trip that the three of them, Takopi, Azuma, and she, planned to get Chappie back, and, you know, what they spent most of their time with after covering up the death of Marina and everything. But finds out Chappie isn't there. Probably was put down for biting a kid, I don't know, or still with animal control or whatever. And her dad already has a new family and isn't interested in her at all. Outright denies that she is his daughter, in fact. So he's also a scumbag. And Takopi begs Shizuka to come home with him and return to how he was. A mood endeavor, and when she hits him with a stone for abandoning her as well, he remembers his past, and the show has another twist in store for us. So, final warning, because this is the final twist. I've come this far, I might just give that away as well, because if you're listening to that now, it's your own fault. I've warned you several times, but this is the final twist of the show, and I guess the final reveal of what the original sin actually refers to. So 3, 2, 1. In a random side conversation between Azuma and Takopi in an earlier episode, we learned that there is a big clock on planet Happy that can apparently make you travel through time and space. Which explains why at the beginning of the next episode we see a flashback to an alternate timeline that just has come before the main events of the show, or the show that started for us, the way the show started for us, where Takopi traveled to Earth, and instead of Shizuka, he met Marina, an older version of Marina, already in high school, physically scarred by her drunk mother, because, of course, her problems still exist, because everything else was the same. And that was immediately like, whoa, okay, this has another wrinkle to it. There's something interesting. There's also this really interesting blunt statement, or a really cool blunt statement the show makes via Takopi here, when Marina tells him about her dream to one day be a happy mom to a happy child, and Takopi says, oh, got it. So when you've been kicking me around, which she does because Marina is kind of a dick, you have been copying your mom to practice being a mom yourself because your mom does that to you. So that's apparently how Earthlings raise their kids, by treating them as shitty as they were treated. I'm paraphrasing, but man, doesn't that hit the nail on the head? So that the show was really like, hey, here is what we think about bad parents and what a lot of parents do to their kids and how they fuck them up.
You say that, and I could just go back to that scene from, I think it was Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. I know writers who use subtext, and they're all cowards.
I mean, there is a lot of subtext in the show, but not when it counts. Like, the show is just coming out and saying it, and it's like, no, this is what I am about, and this is what I think. I would say, I can imagine the manga author has experienced a shitty childhood. I don't want to put that like out there. I don't know if that's actually the case, but all of this feels very much lived. But yeah, anyway, in this timeline, the out for Marina was actually Azuma, who she fell in love with. But since he runs into Shizuka, who, as we know, he has been in love with since elementary school, Marina loses him to her. Things escalate with her mom dies, and she utters the wish to Takopi to kill Shizuka. He returns to his planet, rewinds time, but gets his memories erased because the stuff is not allowed, and goes back to Earth to kill Shizuka, which he doesn't even know why. But, you know, we witness him doing that in the original timeline, even unintentionally, because he gives her the happy ribbon gadget. Because in the timeline we see in the beginning of the show, because in the original timeline where he tries to help Marina, the rope that Shizuka used to hang herself after Marina gives her the severe beating and everything breaks, and Takopi's gadget doesn't break. So, in the original show, Shizuka survives the suicide attempt. in the original timeline. That's how she actually comes back and how she runs into Azuma, and all the initial, that is the initial trigger of the entire event. She actually survived. And by doing this stuff, Takopi has only made it worse, like by going back in time and getting his memories erased and trying to save her and everything. So what is the way out the show finds for this? Takopi sacrifices himself to turn back time one last time, and with the little camera, and make sure that the small lingering presence in everyone's memories of him, like the time they spent together and everything, without being actually able to putting a finger on this, but him appearing in a sketchbook and everything. And, characters remembering certain gadgets he showed them and everything. That lingering memory of him forms the connective tissue for Marina and Shizuka to actually find that due to their shared suffering and shitty parents, they have more in common than stuff that divides them, which gets them to talk to each other and become friends. And yeah, that's how the show ends. Like, they walk together after, Marina gives Shizuka a beating, and her notebook falls out, and she sees Takopi in that notebook scribbled, and they both kind of remember what he was, but not really their time spent with him, but they remember that it was something that brought joy to their life, and that just stops the fight, and they start talking about their parents, and then find common ground. And the next time we see them, after Flash Forward, we see them in high school, and see them hanging out together. And you see they have become tight friends. Like, they're hanging out at the store trying to buy cosmetics or whatever, and talking about their parents, and, something about your mom is always shitty or whatever. And it's very appropriate. But yeah, and under that, all of that is underlined by kind of Takopi sending a message to all the people he met in the future, which they won't hear, of course, but that he tells to the audience, where it's like, hey, it's not perfect, but at least now you're not alone anymore. At least now you have someone you can talk to. Might not be the person that you wanted, but it actually turned out okay. And, the bittersweet ending this is a bit of a cop-out in a way, because for a show that is very intent on telling us that there are no easy answers, the shared memory of Takopi being the catalyst that makes both Marina and Shizuka, and Azuma too, by the way, turn over a new leaf is a bit convenient. But then again, the other big statement the show makes is that the most important thing is to talk to each other and not think you have to be alone with your grief and resentments. And in that regard, the ending works. And it also does not go super glossy Hollywood happy end. Most of the problems the characters have remain, symbolized by Marina's scar, which is still there, which her mother gave her in the other timeline. She eventually gets so distraught over her husband leaving or whatever that she attacks Marina in a drunk fugate state with a broken bottle and cuts up her cheek. But, it leaves us with a little bit of hope for the future of these characters, which is the important thing in a dark, often very uncomfortable to watch story like this one. And regardless of how uncomfortable and painful it was to watch this show sometimes, it was also beautiful and emotionally rewarding and gave me a lot of food for thought, which, hey, a lot of shows don't manage to do this with 12 or 24 episodes. So this one being able to do it in 6 is an achievement that cannot be underestimated. And yeah, you can watch those 6 episodes on Crunchyroll and some other streaming services depending on your location. And if you can stomach it, I heavily recommend you doing so, because I love this little fucked up show and the wild ride it took me on. Just like its characters, it made me smile and it made me cry and called me out on some of my prejudices and preconceived notions. I always like when a show challenges me like that. It doesn't provide super easy answers, but I think leaves the viewer with a hopeful ending note. Outside of that, there is not much more to say than people are complicated. And if you want to have kids, please do it for unselfish reasons. Talk to them, listen to them, give them love. And if you can't do that, please don't have kids. And find another person to talk and connect to that makes you happy. Being alone sucks, but you don't have to be, as long as you're willing to talk to people. And if you need help, please seek it out and don't give up on your life. It's the only one you have. And that is a wrap on the 173rd episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our podcast is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to vrrt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Find us where all the podcasts live, but also check out animebrainfreeze.com for our review index and more. Please leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast app of choice if you can. Follow us on the socials or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next episode. Macht's gut.
Take care, everybody.
Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
We're going on vacation to Hawaii, sort of.
And a red whirlwind sweeps through a little town right into everyone's hearts.